This is the Brave New Coin Crypto Conversation, hosted by Andy Pickering.
Hi everyone, Andy Pickering here. I'm your host and welcome to the Crypto Conversation, a Brave New Coin podcast where we talk to the people building the future in the Bitcoin, blockchain and cryptocurrency space. My guest today is Nick. Nick is the lead developer of ENS, the Ethereum Naming Service, and an alum of the Ethereum Foundation. Hey, welcome to the show, Nick.
Hello, thank you.
Hey, well, I suppose to begin with, we should do what we always do, Nick, which is get you to introduce yourself. Just love to hear a little bit about your background and I suppose your introduction to the crypto blockchain space. Where did this, when and where did this happen for you?
Sure, yeah. For me, it was back in 2016. I was working at Google actually, and got approached by a large blue chip finance company who was like, "Do you want to work for us on Ethereum?" And I went, "Well, no, but this Ethereum thing sounds interesting," and started investigating it and playing around with it, and pretty quickly found I was writing Solidity code and publishing libraries and stuff. And getting really engrossed in it. And shortly thereafter, the Ethereum Foundation offered me a job working on Go Ethereum, and I sort of leapt at the chance, which was, a big leap to go from full-time employment to being a contractor and the only person in my city who was working on this entirely remotely. But I've never regretted it since.
Fantastic. And do you want to explain what city that is, or if you prefer not to, that's fine as well.
At the time, I was living in London.
So, okay, and even then, probably not. I suppose it was the early days still, but
yeah, it was less than a year post launch, and most people were sort of distributed around Europe, but coincidentally, none of them in London. For context, my first day at the Ethereum Foundation was the day after the DAO hack, so that was exciting.
Absolutely. So you've obviously been extremely deep into the Ethereum ecosystem ever since. And well, today we're really here to talk about the Ethereum Naming Service, and it's been a huge week for you guys. But let's start at the beginning before we get into that. Maybe I'd love to just hear it from yourself. What is ENS?
So ENS is put simply a way to have human readable identifiers and names like nick.eth instead of long, complex computer readable things such as 0x, A9, B3, etc., on for 40 characters. The insight is much the same as DNS, where you don't type in, Google's IP address into your browser, you type in google.com. We oughtn't to have to deal with cryptocurrency addresses or IPFS hashes or anything like that in the crypto space either.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so, we'll keep going, Nick. So it's decentralized naming for wallets, websites, addresses. Talk us through, I suppose, some of the different use cases.
Yeah, so the original use cases we had in mind were for Ethereum addresses and for decentralized content like Swarm and IPFS. And since then, it's expanded a lot. We now support pretty much every major cryptocurrency. You can, just because it's on Ethereum doesn't mean you can't use it to address a Bitcoin address or, Dogecoin or whatever suits you. The sort of uses beyond that have expanded quite a lot beyond just simple addressing. So, for instance, now you can set a profile picture on your ENS name, and when you sign into a supporting site, it will show your profile picture and your ENS name rather than just your Ethereum address and some identikit.
And so, in some ways, this is a crucial building block for what we're calling Web3 at the moment, right?
Yes, absolutely. And it's interesting how we've sort of evolved from the basic beginnings of just name resolution up to being basically an identity solution and how popular that's been.
Yeah. So, and well, just before we get into, as I said, it's been a big week for you guys. I'd love to understand a little bit about the origin story of ENS, and also just talk us through some of the I guess the growth metrics or anything that you're watching to kind of give us an extent of, how quickly it is growing or being adopted, if you like?
Yeah, so the sort of origin story is when I first started working at the Ethereum Foundation, I was actually working for the Swarm team, and they needed a naming system to be able to address Swarm resources. And so there were already some very basic naming like solutions on Ethereum, but they weren't widely used and they were not very extensible. They were extremely limited. And so I started working on ENS as a side project for that, basically. And it quickly grew beyond, Swarm and became much more relevant to just sort of general Ethereum naming. I moved over to the Geth team, the Go Ethereum team, kept working on ENS, and it sort of gradually evolved from like a part-time side project into taking up all my time at the EF, and then eventually the EF was like, look, this is too big a project for one person. Why don't you create a new organization and we'll give you a generous grant to get you started, and you can go do ENS as an independent project. And it's sort of only grown from there. In terms of like growth statistics and so on, we've got over 430,000 names now. We're integrated into over 300 applications, including all the most popular wallets. Over 170,000 Ethereum accounts own names at this point. And all of that has been growing dramatically over time as sort of adoption, as particularly in the last 6 months, has just skyrocketed.
Yeah, it's been a huge year for the industry, that is for sure, and certainly for you guys. Well, tell us what's been happening over the last week or so that has been very significant for ENS.
Yeah, so a week and a half ago, we announced that we were going to be decentralizing ENS by launching a DAO that would allow users to vote on governance proposals and decide the future of ENS. And that we were looking for delegates, people who would sort of participate directly in the governance process and who individual users could delegate their votes to, rather than having to vote individually on every single proposal. And that was met with enormous interest. We shortly after that, we released the details of how the token was being allocated, and we sort of designed it to try and be as fair and recognizing the input of people rather than just purchasing names, being that you're involved in the ENS ecosystem as we could. And then this last Monday for part of the world, Tuesday in New Zealand, we officially launched the token, and the response so far has been astronomical. We had 25 million tokens set aside for the airdrop, 25% of the total supply, and I think as of now we've only got about 11 million left in the airdrop. So well over half has already been claimed. We've had millions of votes on our constitution, which is the sort of founding document of what the principles of the ENS DAO are. Each token gets an opportunity to vote, and we wanted each person who claimed to have an opportunity to say what they thought of this like founding document, rather than that being handled by delegates. And it's been very gratifying to see how much people what they think of ENS and how interested they are.
Yeah, you're right when you say it has been very well received, and I think it's still very early, and the concept of DAOs and airdrops and governance tokens and decentralized governance in general, really, these are all very it's a new space. But do you think it's fair to say that the structure of the way that you guys have, I suppose, planned, implemented, and executed this has, maybe not led the way, but perhaps led the way, Nick?
I think what we've tried to do is we've tried to learn from other successful projects in the past and add our own unique things to it. We based a lot off the success we saw with the Gitcoin launch and with, of course, Uniswap. We've been able to take advantage of some of the same tools, like things built by OpenZeppelin and so forth, that facilitate all of this. And then we've added our own things on top, utilizing existing tooling where we can, and just tried to make the whole experience as sort of smooth and seamless as possible. So, we may be doing new things, but kind of on the shoulders of giants, so to speak.
Sure, and that's certainly how crypto works. That's how technology works in general. Paul, talk to me a little bit more about the governance structure and plan with the delegates then, Nick. So, because one of the problems with DAOs and I suppose delegate-based chains is that not everyone has the time or interest to keep up with all the different proposals and make sure that they're activating their voting rights. So, of course, one of the solutions to that is the delegate system. You can delegate your voting rights, and I know there's been a lot of interest here, and I think you yourself had to actually say to people, can you please stop delegating your voting rights to me? I don't want everyone's voting rights. So yeah, I mean, talk us through the sort of the different philosophies here and how you try and solve that and still make it a functioning democratic ecosystem.
Yeah, it is difficult because it's simply not realistic to expect 100,000 people, with an average of like 180 tokens each to individually care about every single thing that's happening with ENS. People have a lot going on in their lives, and it's just not realistic. But what is more realistic, I think, is you have these delegates, and at least their part-time job is keeping abreast of developments in the project they're a delegate for, and they can post up a position, they can describe, what their opinions are in broad terms, and much like a sort of a political candidate, people can choose to vote for them by delegating to them or not. And so long as that person continues to represent the interests of the people who've delegated to them, they continue to have delegated stake. And, the nice thing about this is, unlike, existing political systems with elections and so on, if at any time you disagree with your delegate, you can take your vote away and give it to someone else. So this, has the potential to work really well. There are still issues we need to sort through. So, one of the big ones is how are delegates or just participants in governance in general compensated? Because we don't really want a situation where the only people who can afford to be involved in governance are those who are very well off or are being paid by someone else to participate, which usually means there's some sort of lobbyist. We want this to be accessible to people who legitimately care about the project, but also still have bills to pay. So that, I think, is one of the things we're going to be exploring first in the DAO, is how to incentivize delegates to participate without, sort of the obvious potential for gaming of incentives and so on that exists there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Nick. Well, I'd love it then if you could also just talk to us about, what happens next. Anything that you can share on ENS itself as you guys continue to, I suppose, build out the product, if you like, and also then after that, the roadmap, if there is one, for the DAO and what that looks like.
Yeah, well, in terms of the product, in parallel with this launch, we've been working on a whole bunch of changes. We have a new UI for our manager coming up that will make it much easier to interact with, and is sort of more focused around the ENS as internet identity thing than our existing manager was. We've been working on a suite of upgrades to the contracts, which will allow a bunch of new functionality, such as setting up a name, like registering a name and setting it as your primary name all in one operation, which will save gas and make things quicker and easier. And also what we're calling the name wrapper, which will make it easier to do things like securely issue subdomains that you can give out to other people so that they know that they own their subdomain and things like that. So we're really excited about all those technical improvements that we have lined up. From the DAO's point of view, I think the first order of business is going to be ratifying the Constitution, which is well on the way. Sort of the voting period on that ends a week from when we opened the airdrop. And then after that, there's a number of things that I expect will be happening in parallel, really. One is the DAO formally petitioning the key holders of ENS, who are the ones who have sort of been the stewards of the ENS's powers, such as they are up until now. The DAO formally petitioning them for the funds and control of the relevant levers and so on. the other thing will be, there's already a number of delegates who have proposals for amendments to the Constitution, and there is an amendment process there. So it'll be exciting to see, what sort of consensus we can come to on that and have it really as sort of a user-driven constitution. And we sort of deliberately set the threshold for quorum quite low initially, with the idea that probably the DAO would want to make some changes, and then later we can raise that bar to make it, require a larger effort to change in the future. And just other governance proposals in general, like we want to start looking at how to fund public goods with the treasury that ENS has amassed. We also have proposals coming from people to do things like impose a royalty on secondary sales on OpenSea, for instance, that could fund public goods through the DAO and things like that.
Yeah, fantastic stuff, Nick. Well, as you're an Ethereum developer, so probably more technical than a lot of guests that come on the show, really want to switch gears just slightly. I suppose just go zoom out slightly and kind of get your perspectives on really different parts of the Ethereum and crypto ecosystem, and I guess some of the hot topics of the moment, really. Let's start with NFTs. Love to get your opinions, and look, please be as opinionated as you like. What do you like? What don't you like? How do you see NFTs evolving? Where do they have to get to? Your thoughts, please.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've been at least peripherally involved in NFTs for a very long time. I was an EIP editor back when ERC 721 was originally proposed, and helped provide feedback on that. I found some bugs in the CryptoKitties contract, which was the first 721 NFT, and so on and so forth. And so it's something that definitely interests me. And I sort of have collected a few things that I think are quite cool. And I see some really cool NFT projects coming out with, novel mechanisms and interesting art and so forth. I mean, I also feel like sometimes things get very hypey and sort of overdone, if you see what I mean. I'm not entirely convinced of NFTs as an asset class, as opposed to like NFTs as a collectible. Seems more interesting to me. I guess that's my basic opinion on them.
Yeah, it's just, well, I suppose it's just how the crypto markets have worked, from Bitcoin to altcoins, Ethereum to DeFi, and then NFTs just had these incredibly big and large hype cycles that characterize the sort of the first waves of adoption. Well, I don't know. It's with the likes of Coinbase opening up their own NFT platforms, and all the other exchanges, the big ones will no doubt follow suit. FTX are as well. It's just hard to see. The adoption wave will just continue, though. Surely.
I think so. Yeah, it's there are some interesting and exciting things people are doing with them, and I hope that continues regardless of what the price is doing.
Yeah. Well, give us a couple of examples then of please be as esoteric as you like, Nick. What do you think are some good examples of interesting and exotic things that can or will be done with NFTs?
Sure. Well, there's a project called EtherCards, which is actually a brand that I originally created as like a way to send people Ether on physical cards, but they have now pivoted to doing NFTs, and they're doing quite a cool system where NFTs have traits that provide actual, interactive benefits. So, for instance, you might have a reforge trait where your card is a stack of sort of randomized components of art that makes a unique card. But if you don't like some of them, you can re-roll them to get a different card. And they're, sort of building a whole ecosystem around that, where other projects come out that are, easier to mint if you already have Ether cards and so forth. They're doing all sorts of interesting sort of gamification around that. Another at sort of the opposite end of sort of commercial is Robin Sloan is an author who came up with the idea of amulets. And an amulet is a short poem, no more than 64 characters long, that when you hash it with a hashing algorithm has more than 4 8s in a row. And the fascinating thing about this is short poems are, good poems are rare, but humans can churn them out, reasonably well. Strings that hash to something in particular are rare, but computers can churn them out very well. But creating something that's both of these things, that's like actually an interesting poem and also has this numeric property, is surprisingly difficult. So it's quite an achievement to find one. And so I took that and set up like a royalty-free NFT contract so that if you find one, you can mint it as an NFT. And people have found some really very cool ones. I think one of my favorites is just "Don't worry," all in capitals with a full stop, is an amulet, for instance. And there's some quite nice sort of haiku-esque ones as well. And I think it's kind of very different from the usual like graphics heavy, big on like big pre-sales, because in theory it's unlimited. Anyone can come up with any one they want, but it takes real skill to find something that's aesthetically appealing.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Well, what about, let's move to Ethereum itself, Nick. So as we've learnt, you've been involved almost since the very early days from the developer side, really. Ethereum has had its ups and downs, and in some ways has sometimes can become a victim of its own success, with gas prices just getting out of control at times. That happens a lot in NFT and DeFi, and sometimes makes things unusable, but particularly for smaller people doing, people doing smaller transactions, can price them out, and it can be very frustrating. So as a result, you've seen, the rise of these other chains, and now we've got these all these different smart contract platforms competing with each other, which of course is a good thing. But I guess this is a roundabout way of saying, where, from your perspective, is Ethereum at? How is the move to proof of stake progressing? Will that solve some of these problems? Can the team pull it off, and when does it happen? It's big picture stuff here, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, Ethereum's kind of almost epitomizes the whole like it's ready when it's ready type thing. That proof of stake has taken far longer than people expected when Ethereum was first launched. But people have kept grinding away on it and actually making like measurable progress. So now we have a proof of stake beacon chain, and we're really not that far from having an execution layer and actually being able to do the merge and migrate everything over effectively to ETH 2.0. And that's really exciting because proof of stake is definitely, properly constructed as a better system than proof of work. It wastes less resources. It's more economically secure. It's generally all around, in my mind, a more elegant system. And because it wastes less resources, you have to spend less resources, like rewarding the miners who create the blocks and so forth as well. It's fundamentally not a scalability improvement. Like, it will offer some additional scalability along some axes, but its main goal is not that. And so there are other solutions we have to look to for scalability, and the primary one there is roll-ups, whether they're optimistic roll-ups or zero-knowledge roll-ups. And there is some really exciting developments going on there with Optimism and Arbitrum and various ZK efforts that promise to provide basically either EVM compatible chains that have much higher throughput, or non-EVM compatible chains that have virtually unlimited throughput potentially. And that's where I see all of this stuff heading, really. And it will be very interesting to see which ones succeed better, and how quickly a lot of the ecosystem migrates onto them.
Yeah, okay. Again, that makes sense. And what about Bitcoin then? How do you see Bitcoin evolving? Does Bitcoin evolve? Yeah, how do you see the kind of the dynamic between let's say Bitcoin as the dominant proof of work chain and wanting to stay that way into the future? Still a huge amount of interest and investment effectively riding on Bitcoin. Just interested in what you see happening there.
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin long ago has effectively embraced ossification. Like, it's no longer possible to make significant technical changes or improvements to Bitcoin in my mind, and it takes them an extremely long time to push through very basic improvements. And it's a bit disappointing because with some fairly straightforward changes, Bitcoin could have been usable as a data availability layer that facilitates layer twos much more easily. And just a basic ability to verify state roots and things like that. Additional opcodes that made it easier to build roll-ups and build side chains and build state channels and so on. But the inability of the community to come to consensus on sort of those basic changes has meant that anyone trying to develop this on top of Bitcoin is stuck with either custodial solutions, which many Bitcoiners then seem to tout as the best thing available, or solutions that are extremely technically convoluted because they're working around the limitations of Bitcoin's virtual machine. So I don't see that changing. I think that Bitcoin has a lot of inertia as like the original cryptocurrency and as the biggest cryptocurrency, but I don't think it can run on that inertia indefinitely.
Yeah, interesting, Nick. Okay. Just what else did I want to discuss? I guess, yeah, Web3 and metaverse, ever since Zuckerberg did what he did, metaverse has become, I'm sure as we approach the end of the year, metaverse will probably be in the running for buzzword of the year. Not sure if that's good or bad. He's trying to give us a bad name in some ways, but yeah, well, it's just interesting the narrative that you probably saw that Discord. I can't remember his name, the CEO or the founder or whoever he was at Discord. Kind of, he tweeted out a screenshot of, I suppose, them, whatever they're doing, some testing of perhaps integrating some Web3 wallets, that kind of stuff. And the pushback from Discord users was quite intense, so much so that he's effectively backed down, I think. You see the same thing with NFTs, and I guess it's another form. It's not a culture war, but it kind of is a culture war because there's this incredible pushback from I don't know if it's not the mainstream. It's just they're well-intentioned people, but perhaps they're slightly misguided with what they think is happening with Web3 and NFTs and burning the planet. And it's just hard to fight these entrenched narratives once they're in place. So maybe your thoughts on that, and then just go broader as to what you see happening with the kind of the early versions of the metaverse, anything that you're watching, and what you think of the likes of Zuckerberg. Again, big picture stuff, Nick.
yeah, gotcha. I guess I sort of understand both perspectives a little bit because I think NFTs are cool and have some interesting applications, and I've been sort of had some at least peripheral involvement in them right back from the very beginning when we were just building interesting technical standards. And there is actually a lot of that innovation going on, but there's also this enormous hype cycle and a ridiculous amount of speculation around them. And a lot of people, outside the community are really put off by that, and understandably so. They see these things going for ridiculous valuations. They see the system that seems to be, pumps and dumps and seems to be Ponzi-esque almost. And they see effectively a lot of stuff in service of greed. That's how it comes across to them. But then on the other side of things, they don't see the interesting applications that founded all of this and that are still evolving because it's sort of obscured by all this. And a lot of these people have a reflexive dismissal. They've been told that they're bad for these various reasons of usually poorly constructed arguments. And they've made up their mind on this, and just mentioning NFTs is poisonous. There are a lot of people I respect a lot and who are interesting people with deep technical insights or deep social insights who nevertheless have sort of bought into this narrative that NFTs are intrinsically evil. And so it's really disappointing to see that. And I kind of hope that continued innovation and building interesting things and focusing on how creators can build communities and be rewarded for their art, for their creations, rather than just a vehicle for speculation, will demonstrate their true value. And the whole burning the planet thing is, to some degree, a legitimate complaint. Like, proof of work is enormously wasteful. And fortunately, Ethereum is working directly on fixing that and moving over to proof of stake, where it's effectively a non-issue. In terms of the metaverse, like, I haven't really been involved much in that end of things. I see Facebook and Zuckerberg as enormously dangerous, and both to our civil society and to sort of monopolizing tech in general. And would love nothing more than to see their role in everything sort of diminish into irrelevance. I do feel like they're rebranding to Meta and trying to make metaverse their thing is kind of an attempt to stay ahead of the curve and be relevant by jumping on the bandwagon and then sort of leading it where they want. And I hope it's as successful as their Libra project.
Yeah, wonderfully said, Nick. Thank you. I enjoyed that, and I very much agree. Let's go to a very quick break, and then we'll come back. And I'm very much looking forward to getting your unique perspectives on the very famous crypto conversation hot take round.
In today's crypto market, the team at Brave New Coin are the sector's leading builders of custom crypto indices. BNC's powerful indexing engine draws on Brave New Coin's premium data to calculate high-frequency intraday and end-of-day indices for a wide range of index products. BNC's custom indices help you to gain exposure to the crypto assets class and track your performance against the market without having to become a stock picker. Brave New Coin's custom indices team delivers experienced consultancy, premium data, and trusted calculation. Contact BNC today to find out more.
All right, we're back, and I'm with Nick. Nick is the lead developer at ENS, and listeners, I hope Nick doesn't mind me saying so. He did kind of hint at it, but you may have picked up from his accent. Nick is a fellow New Zealander. It's always good to have other fellow crypto Kiwis on the show. But Nick, I like to finish each Crypto Conversation podcast with just a quick fun round of rapid fire crypto conversation hot takes. Are you up for it?
Sure.
All right, so look, you can approach this any way you want, Nick. You don't have to be, well, I'd like to say quick, snappy answers, but I want to hear your opinions as well, because that's really what I want. So just want your hot takes, your hot opinions. I think we know the answer to the first one. It is, where do you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-coin opportunist spectrum?
Very much on the multi-coin end of it. Like, I think that building interesting systems requires technical innovation and diversity, and trying things out, not just building one thing and then swearing it's the gospel.
Yeah, nicely said. Okay, well, what would you say is your firmest conviction crypto opinion?
That, and probably most controversial, is that ultimately layer zero is the social layer, that any system is only as immutable as people agreeing to continue to run it, and that people agreeing what rules they want a system to use is the fundamental base of consensus.
Nice, I like that a lot. Okay, here's a curveball for you, Nick. UBI as either a potential fix for AI-induced automation, or as a potential remedy for some kind of future dystopian inequality-ridden world, or airdrops in kind of one sense are almost an early form of UBI. And I don't know if you've seen what I think the mayor of Miami said today. They're going to give away the Bitcoin that they earn from, I think, staking the Miami token, something like that. Anyway, UBI, yes or no?
I think that with human productivity is so much higher than it was in the past, that inevitably full employment for full-time work is eventually going to be a thing of the past, and we're going to need to restructure in a way that recognizes that, and the fact that we simply don't have to have everybody working all the time in order for us all to survive comfortably. So I think something like UBI is probably inevitable. I'm a little skeptical of efforts to do it sort of privately via the blockchain as opposed to on a nationwide level.
Yeah, I think that's very fair, very fair. Okay. Bill Gates famously said that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. Now, I'm very aware that Bill Gates probably has less relevance to blockchain, particularly these days, but let's focus on Ethereum. What does it look like in 10 years' time?
I think as the base layer that's mostly used by rollups and a lot less by individual users directly, and therefore much more scalable and hopefully with good integrations between systems. But honestly, Ethereum's like only a bit over 5 years old now. Like projecting it twice its own life into the future seems extremely difficult.
Couldn't agree more, and that's why the next hot take question comes from sci-fi author William Gibson, who of course famously said that the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. Can you think of an example of the future being here right now, Nick, but most people just aren't really aware of it?
I think like the identity stuff around Ethereum and you know, decentralized identity being related to your cryptographic keys is part of that. Like, we're building systems where you don't need some centralized identity provider, which has been technically possible for a long time but hasn't got adoption, and this may be the route to do that.
Nice. Okay, time to zoom out, time to get a little bit weird. What do you see as the long-term future for the human race? Do you see a dystopia or utopia?
A little of both. Like, on the depressing end of things, it seems to me that people frequently forget the lessons of history and have to relearn them the hard way, and so we end up stumbling into the same basic stupid mistakes over and over again. But if you look at any chart of like human lifespan, or like well-being adjusted lifespan, or you know, average human wealth, or you know, any number of metrics like that, they trend upwards over time because we innovate and we build more productive societies that require less from people for survival and happiness. And so I think in the very long term that trend will probably continue.
Yeah, and on a similar note then, Nick, what is the future of DAOs? How do you see DAOs evolving, and what are the kind of the big picture ideas that DAOs can contribute to some of the limitations of the human species?
I think DAOs are probably going to have a difficult adolescence because there are so many questions around who controls governance and you know, and how it's administered and how it's distributed and how you prevent moneyed interests from controlling the whole thing, which may seem a bit rich coming from someone who just launched a coin voting DAO, but I also legitimately believe that they are like a really interesting new decentralized primitive that provides an opportunity for people to have a real voice in how the systems they use are run, and not just by voting but also by participating, and can reward people for that participation without them needing to apply for a job. They can just demonstrate that they're effective. So it's exciting, but I think we'll also see a lot of failures.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just the you know, the pragmatic New Zealander-ness in you, Nick, but I just love how you're so pragmatic and objective and rational about all this stuff. Absolutely refreshing.
Thank you.
Let's finish this off. Finally, Nick, what is your favorite science fiction book, film, show, or universe?
Right now, I think probably my favorite is still Walk Away by Cory Doctorow, which is basically post-apocalyptic utopic fiction. So the idea is, what if like things went horribly wrong, and then instead of everybody getting guns and building walled compounds, we sort of came together to work on building something new collaboratively. And I think it fits the Web3 ethos extremely well.
Yeah, so Cory Doctorow, he's an interesting one. I don't know if you follow him on Twitter, but
I do.
Yeah, so do I. I think I just saw him this morning. It might have been last night. I was reading a thread that he wrote, and basically laying into NFTs and saying, what did you read that thread?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, and also he was talking about this is typical stuff for a sci-fi author, I suppose, in the same way that what's his name, Stevenson, the snow crash guy, famously coined metaverse. Doctorow has done. I think he was talking about bezel. Is that right?
Yes.
And do you remember the definition of bezel?
It's the period between when a con man pulls off the con and his mark realizes it.
That's right, and he's basically saying that NFTs and a lot of that's what an NFT is, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I include him in my list of people I greatly respect who I think are wrong about NFTs.
Yes. All right. Well, that feels like a good place to finish. Nick, I've actually really enjoyed talking to you. You've been a fantastic guest. Please close it out any way they can. I guess, please give another snapshot of ENS and tell people where they should go if they don't already have an eighth name, and why they should get one, and also where they can go to find you on Twitter.
Sure. If you don't already have an ENS name, you should get one so that people can refer to your Ethereum account and your decentralized website and so forth in a way that is easy and memorable. You can go to app.ens.domains for that. If you've already got one, don't forget to claim your ENS tokens at claim.ens.domains. And if you want to follow me, I'm on Twitter, Nick SD Johnson, but I already have far too many followers, so please don't.
I forgot one other thing I wanted to ask you, Nick. MetaMask. What do you think of MetaMask just as a wallet, as a project? And have you seen the speculation that they're going to do some kind of airdrop soon as well? Any thoughts?
I've seen the speculation, no idea if they would or not. I love MetaMask as a project, and I love the team, and they're fantastic people who have spent a lot of time on probably one of the most underappreciated and often lambasted tools in our space that is like absolutely crucial to just about every decentralized app.
Fantastic. As I say, a pleasure to talk to you, Nick. Thank you very much for coming on the show. All the best, and bye for now.
Thank you. See ya.